Imagine a man whose faith single-handedly laid the foundation for three major world religions. Who is this man, and how did his life become so impactful? Stay until the end for a meaningful prayer inspired by his journey. I have made you a father of many nations, Genesis chapter 17 verse 5, Niv. Imagine standing at the brink of a vast, unknown land, hearing an unmistakable voice calling out to you. This was the experience of a man named Abram, as recounted in Genesis chapter 12 verses 1 to 3. Here, the God of all creation speaks directly to him, saying, "Go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." In these verses, we see not just a call, but a promise of blessing and greatness. Abram, later known as Abraham, follows this divine command without hesitation, underscoring a profound faith and trust in God's word. As we move further into his story, Genesis chapter 17 verses 4 to 5 provides another pivotal moment. Here, God formalizes his covenant with Abraham, solidifying the earlier promises with powerful, binding words. God says to Abraham, "As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations." The significance of this name change, the transformation from Abram, meaning exalted father, to Abraham, father of many, is monumental. It's a testament to the broad, enduring impact that Abraham's faith would have on the world. As he is obedient to God's leading, God in turn commits to a relationship with him that will extend through countless generations. These key biblical texts form the foundational bedrock of Abraham's narrative and serve as a cornerstone for faith in God's promises. They are a reminder that embracing divine direction and holding steadfast to God's promises can lead to blessings that extend far beyond our imagination, reaching all corners of the earth and touching the lives of millions through time. Picture a man called out from the comfort and familiarity of his homeland, journeying into an unknown wilderness solely guided by a divine promise. This is Abraham, originally named Abram, a central figure in the book of Genesis whose life and faith would pivotally shape the destiny of nations and the course of history. The story begins with Abram living in Ur of the Chaldeans, a prosperous city in ancient Mesopotamia. It is here that God first speaks to him, issuing an extraordinary call. "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." Genesis chapter 12 verse 1, Niv. With this command comes a sweeping promise. God vows to make Abram into a great nation, to bless him and make his name great. All peoples on earth will be blessed through him. Obediently, Abram sets out, taking his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions, journeying to the land of Canaan. This step of faith marks the beginning of a covenant relationship between Abram and God. It is in Canaan that God again speaks to Abram, assuring him that this land will belong to his offspring. As time progresses, Abram's life is marked by a series of faith-testing events and divine encounters. He and his family endure famines, confrontations with neighboring kings, and moments of doubt. Despite these challenges, God's promises are unwavering. One of the pinnacle moments in Abram's journey is recorded in Genesis chapter 15. God makes a formal covenant with him, promising an heir from his own body and descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. Through a sacred ritual, God solidifies his promise, indicating that Abram's descendants will inherit the land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates. However, the path is not without its twists. Abram and Sarai, aging and still childless, decide to take matters into their own hands. Sarai offers her maidservant Hagar to Abram, resulting in the birth of Ishmael. Yet, This was not the fulfillment of God's promise. God reiterates his covenant, changes Abram's name to Abraham, meaning, father of many, and Sarai to Sarah, promising that she will bear a son. The promise is miraculously fulfilled with the birth of Isaac, a child born to Abraham and Sarah in their old age. Isaac becomes the bearer of the covenant, continuing the lineage through which the promises will unfold. Another significant episode is the testing of Abraham's faith on Mount Moriah. God commands Abraham to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. In an act of profound obedience, Abraham prepares to carry out the command, only to have God intervene at the last moment, providing a ram as a substitute and reaffirming his covenant with Abraham. Abraham's narrative concludes with a testament to his enduring faith in God's faithfulness. He lives to a ripe old age, witnessing the early chapters of the fulfillment of God's promises. His journey, covenant, and legacy lay a foundational stone for the nation of Israel and resonate through the annals of three major world religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Thus, Abraham's life is not only a saga of personal faith but a divine blueprint that unfolds throughout the sacred texts. It is a story of unshakable trust in God's promises amidst uncertainty and a profound lesson in the transformative power of faith. Imagine yourself stepping back in time, treading the ancient soil of Mesopotamia, a land rich with history and teeming with the bustle of early civilization. In this fertile crescent, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, society thrived. Towering ziggurats rose against the expansive sky, and markets buzzed with the exchange of goods and ideas. This is the period we find Abraham, a figure whose journey is both historical and divinely orchestrated. Some 3 millennia before Christ, Mesopotamia was a canvas of city-states, each with its own king, gods, and cultural tapestry. Magnificent cities like Ur and Haran stood as beacons of human achievement, deeply rooted in the worship of a pantheon of deities and the observance of intricate rituals. Abraham, initially known as Abram, belonged to this ancient world. Born in Ur of the Chaldeans, he would have been familiar with the rich traditions and prevailing beliefs of his people. Scholars reveal that Ur was a cosmopolitan hub, flaunting advancements in writing, law, and astronomy. It was a place where the ziggurat rose as a physical and spiritual focal point, a staircase bridging the earthly and the divine. Here, people lived by the cycles of the moon, planting crops and celebrating festivals according to celestial patterns. Yet, within this structured and vibrant civilization, there was also spiritual unrest. Mesopotamian religion was a complex web of polytheism, where humans attempted to appease capricious gods to secure health, prosperity, and safety. It was into this matrix of belief and custom that God called Abraham, inviting him to embark on an audacious journey of faith. "Leave your country, your people and your father's household and go to the land I will show you." Genesis chapter 12 verse 1. This was not a mere geographical relocation, but a profound shift in spiritual allegiance, from the polytheism of Mesopotamia to the worship of a single, sovereign God. Abraham's departure marks a pivotal moment in religious history. By choosing to obey, he set forth on a path that would redefine not only his life but the spiritual direction of countless generations. His journey is a testament to courage and trust, stepping into the unknown solely on the promise of God's word. It is through this lens that we must appreciate the significance of Abraham's journey, not just as a physical migration, but as the inception of monotheism, a concept that would shape the world's religious landscape in profound ways. As we examine Abraham's story, it is equally crucial to acknowledge the cultural backdrop of his travels. Moving from the bustling metropolis of Ur, he traversed to Haran, another significant urban center. Haran was known for its worship of the moon god Sin, and it provides a stark contrast to the promise of a new land filled with divine providence. This journey of faith led Abraham through diverse territories, inhabited by various tribes and cultures, each with its own deities and practices. Yet, what stands strikingly clear is Abraham's unwavering commitment to his newfound God. In the face of unfamiliar lands and uncertain futures, he maintained his faith, erecting altars and calling upon the name of the Lord. This act of devotion not only solidified his covenant with God but also laid the foundation for a new spiritual lineage. Thus, the historical context enriches our understanding of Abraham's significance. He was a man who responded to a divine call in a world brimming with established traditions and competing deities. His journey encapsulates the transformative power of faith and the emergence of monotheism in a polytheistic world. It is a narrative that continues to inspire, reminding us of the profound impact one individual's faith can have on the fabric of human history. Let us journey back to the ancient lands of Mesopotamia and the rolling hills of Canaan, where we meet the towering figures of the Old Testament, figures whose lives and faith echo through the millennia. Our tale begins with Abraham, often called the father of all nations. Imagine, if you can, a man chosen by God himself, leaving behind his homeland in obedience to a divine promise. Abraham, whose very name means father of many, was a man of profound faith and commitment. His story, told in the book of Genesis, is one of unwavering trust in God's promises, despite the many trials and hardships he faced. Abraham's faith was so great that he left everything he knew in Ur of the Chaldeans and ventured into the unknown, guided only by an enduring trust in God's word. By his side was Sarah, his faithful wife. Sarah's journey mirrors that of her husband in so many ways. She too left her homeland, endured long years of barrenness, and yet believed in the promises of God. Her laughter at the promise of a son in her old age turned into the laughter of joy when Isaac, whose name means, "he laughs," was born. Through Sarah, we see the strength and resilience of a woman who would become the matriarch of a vast nation. Isaac, the long-awaited son, became a foundational figure in the fulfillment of God's promises to Abraham. Isaac's life, marked by quiet faith and obedience, stands in sharp contrast to the tumultuous paths of his father and sons. Perhaps the most poignant moment in Isaac's life was the near sacrifice on Mount Moriah, a story that reveals the depth of Abraham's faith and the mercy of God. It is one of those narratives that remain etched in the hearts of believers, symbolizing both faith and divine provision. Ishmael, the son of Abraham and Hagar, Sarah's maidservant, also plays a critical role in this story. Although his path diverged from Isaac's, he too was blessed by God. Ishmael's descendants would go on to form great nations, and his story highlights the complexities and the expansions of God's promises. While often seen as a figure of conflict, Ishmael's narrative reminds us of God's care and purpose for all his creations. Another figure we encounter is Melchizedek, the mysterious king of Salem and priest of the Most High God. His interaction with Abraham after the rescue of Lot is brief but immensely significant. Melchizedek blesses Abraham and offers bread and wine, a prelude, many believe, to the Eucharist in Christian tradition. He represents a priesthood that predates and transcends the Levitical order, making him a fascinating figure of theological importance. Lot, Abraham's nephew, brings yet another dynamic to our story. Lot's journey intertwines with Abraham's, from their departure from Ur to the separation of their herds in Canaan. Lot's choice to settle in the plains of Sodom and Gomorrah sets the stage for dramatic rescues and divine judgments. Through Lot, we glimpse the perils of selfish choices and the enduring mercy of God through Abraham's intercessions. In exploring these figures, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Ishmael, Melchizedek, and Lot, we uncover a rich tapestry of faith, obedience, human frailty, and divine grace. Their lives are not distant tales of ancient peoples but resonant stories that mirror our own struggles and triumphs in the walk of faith. So as we delve into their narratives, let our hearts and minds be open to the lessons they impart, guiding us in our own journeys towards a deeper relationship with the eternal. My dear reader, I invite you to embark on a contemplation of two pivotal theological concepts that find their roots in the life of Abraham: the covenant and the interplay of faith and righteousness. Covenant. **. Imagine a bond so sacred that it not only defines a singular life but also shapes the destiny of countless generations. Such is the nature of the covenant established between God and Abraham. This covenant is not a mere agreement or contract, it is a divine promise, a binding commitment that serves as a cornerstone of Judeo-Christian tradition. God, in His infinite benevolence, enters into a personal relationship with Abraham, promising blessings that extend beyond human comprehension. In Genesis chapter 17 verses 4-5, we witness a moment of profound significance. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations, Niv. Here, we see God not only changing Abram's name to Abraham but also transforming his identity and purpose. The covenant assures Abraham of God's unwavering fidelity and sets the stage for the unfolding of a divine plan that would reach into the annals of history, influencing innumerable lives and beliefs. This covenant encompasses promises of progeny, land, and a unique relationship with the divine. It turns Abraham into a pivotal figure whose descendants are to inherit not just the land of Canaan but also the spiritual blessings of being God's chosen people. Thus, the concept of covenant as revealed through Abraham encapsulates the essence of a divinely orchestrated relationship marked by commitment, promises, and a vision that surpasses temporal limitations. Faith and righteousness. Asterisk. Now, let us ponder the profound link between faith and righteousness, a tenet dearly held in the hearts of believers. In Genesis chapter 15 verse 6, it is written, Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Niv. This simple yet profound statement captures the essence of a faith that transcends visible reality and awaits the unseen with patience and trust. Abraham's faith does not merely end with belief. It manifests itself in actions that echo throughout biblical narratives. Faith, in this context, is not merely intellectual assent but a profound trust and reliance upon God. Abraham's readiness to leave his homeland, his willingness to believe in the promise of a son despite Sarah's barrenness, and his preparedness to sacrifice Isaac when commanded, all exemplify a faith that is both active and living. Righteousness, then, is not derived from human merit or deeds but is imputed by God as a result of faith. This sets a precedent for understanding righteousness in the Judeo-Christian tradition. It underscores the belief that righteousness comes through trusting in God's promises and relinquishing reliance on human strength and wisdom. Abraham's faith is a testament to the power of belief that aligns with God's will, demonstrating that true righteousness is a gift from the divine to those who place their trust in Him. To conclude, the theological concepts of covenant and the interplay of faith and righteousness, as illuminated through the life of Abraham, serve as beacons that guide believers in their spiritual journey. These principles invite us to ponder the depth of divine commitment and the transformative power of unwavering faith in the promises of God. May they inspire you to embrace a similar trust and commitment in your walk of faith. Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to unfold before you a tapestry woven with the wisdom of our most influential theologians. Our journey begins with Saint Augustine, a towering figure whose interpretations of Abraham's faith have profoundly impacted Christian thought. Imagine Augustine, a man of brilliant intellect and deep faith, delving into the scriptures with a fervent desire to understand God's relationship with humanity. Augustine perceived Abraham's faith as a pivotal element in this divine relationship. In his seminal work, The City of God, Augustine explored how Abraham's unwavering trust in God's promises exemplified the essence of true faith. For Augustine, Abraham's faith was not mere belief but an active, living trust in the Almighty, a faith that transcended human understanding and beckoned believers to a higher plane of spiritual existence. As we transition from Augustine to the Reformation, we encounter Martin Luther, a steadfast reformer who revered Abraham as a paragon of justification by faith. Luther's writings reveal his admiration for Abraham's unshakable faith, which he saw as a beacon for understanding salvation. Luther passionately argued that, like Abraham, believers are justified not by works but by faith alone. This doctrine of sola fide became a cornerstone of Protestant theology, challenging the prevailing religious norms of his time. Luther's reflections on Abraham are vividly captured in his commentary on Genesis. He emphasized that Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. This righteousness, Luther contended, was imputed by faith, a divine gift rather than a human achievement. Through Abraham, Luther illustrated that faith is a living, daring confidence in God's grace, so assured that it would stake its life on it 1,000 times. Now, let us turn our gaze to modern theologians, whose scholarly pursuits continue to shed light on Abraham's enduring legacy. One prominent figure who stands out is N.T. Wright, a distinguished professor and prolific author. Wright's contributions to the understanding of Abraham are both profound and accessible, bridging the gap between academic scholarship and daily faith practice. Wright illuminates Abraham's story within the broader narrative of God's redemptive plan for humanity. He posits that Abraham's faith was not simply about personal belief but about participating in God's mission to restore and bless the world. Wright asserts that Abraham's descendants, those who share his faith, are called to be agents of this divine blessing, living out the implications of the covenant in their communities and beyond. In his work, Wright often underscores the Apostle Paul's interpretations of Abraham, particularly in his letters to the Romans and Galatians. He elaborates on how Paul saw Abraham's faith as a prototype for Gentile inclusion in God's family. By faith, both Jew and Gentile are grafted into the lineage of Abraham, heirs to the promise and participants in the grand narrative of salvation. Thus, from Augustine's reflections on the nature of faith, through Luther's clarion call to justification by faith alone, to Wright's expansive vision of faith's role in God's redemptive purpose, we see a rich tapestry of theological insight. Each theologian, in his own era, has brought Abraham's faith into sharper focus, revealing its timeless relevance and inspiring countless believers to trust in the promises of God. In our journey through the annals of faith, few figures stand as prominently as Abraham. To understand Abraham's unparalleled role in religious tradition, we must consider how he is venerated by traditional Judeo-Christian beliefs. These views see Abraham as the patriarch, an enduring figure whose faith and actions laid the very foundations of what would become two of the world's great faiths. One cannot begin to grasp this without delving into the scriptures themselves, where we find Abraham's story meticulously chronicled. From the moment God called to Abram, saying, "Go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you," Genesis chapter 12 verse 1, Niv. We witness the first steps of a monumental journey. Divine promises followed, ensuring that Abram, later renamed Abraham, would be the father of a great nation. The traditional view is rooted in passages like Genesis chapter 17 verses 4 to 5, where God solidifies his covenant with Abraham, a promise that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. "As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations." These words represent not merely a promise but a divine declaration of Abraham's destiny. Further supporting this view is Genesis chapter 22, the dramatic episode known as the binding of Isaac. Here, Abraham's readiness to sacrifice his beloved son at God's command exemplifies a faith so profound that it permanently cements his role as a model of obedience and trust in God. This act of unwavering devotion leads God to reaffirm his promise, proclaiming, "Through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." Genesis chapter 22 verse 18, Niv. The epistles of the New Testament, written centuries later, also affirm Abraham's position as the patriarch of faith. In Romans chapter 4, Paul elucidates how Abraham's faith was credited to him as righteousness. This idea is not only central to Christian doctrine but also serves to reinforce the continuity between the Old and New Testaments. Paul's writings underscore that it was Abraham's belief, rather than his adherence to the law, which justified him before God, a principle that became foundational in Christian teaching. Peter's epistles and the book of Hebrews further affirm Abraham's central place in the faith narrative. Hebrews chapter 11, often called the Hall of Faith, exalts Abraham for his willingness to leave his homeland and trust in God's promises, even when their fulfillment seemed impossible. By faith Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8, Niv. These affirmations throughout scriptural texts firmly root Abraham within the bedrock of Judeo-Christian belief. Hence, the traditional view holds Abraham as the patriarch, reverently acknowledged not only in the foundational texts themselves but through centuries of theological discourse that shaped faith communities. His story, brought to life by divine revelation and human witness, stands as a testament to the power of faith and the certainty of God's promises. As we reflect on these passages, the picture of Abraham that emerges is one of a steadfast figure, whose faith and covenant with God became a template for what it means to trust and obey divine will. His narrative is a cornerstone, a point of unity for believers who find in him an exemplar of fidelity and divine favor. Through these scriptural underpinnings, traditional Judeo-Christian beliefs uphold Abraham's patriarchal status, celebrating a legacy that continues to inspire and guide millions across generations and cultures. His life story, resonating through holy texts, perpetuates the intimate bond between the divine and humankind, a bond that commenced with a covenant and echoes through the ages. Let me take you on a journey, one that may challenge the traditional views you hold dearly about a man whose story is foundational to many faiths. Imagine a room filled with scholars, each with a different perspective, each with a passion for the truth. It's a room where debates are as vibrant as the tapestries on the wall, and where the life of Abraham is scrutinized through lenses both ancient and modern. One scholar rises to speak, his voice calm but his words sharp. He questions the historicity of Abraham, suggesting that the stories we read might be more legendary than factual. His argument is built on the basis that no direct archaeological evidence has been found to irrefutably confirm Abraham's existence, questioning whether he was a real person or a literary construct. Another scholar counters with fervor. She argues that the lack of evidence does not equate to evidence of absence. She points out that many ancient figures have sparse archaeological records, yet they are accepted as historical. She suggests that Abraham's narrative might have been preserved through oral traditions long before it was documented, which was a common practice in antiquity. The debate shifts to textual criticisms. The stories of Abraham, they agree, were written down many generations after the events they describe. Some critics argue that the texts reflect the concerns and contexts of the later authors rather than the actual events of Abraham's life. For instance, the varying accounts and repetitions within Genesis could indicate different sources woven together, each with its own theological agenda. A hush falls over the room as another scholar addresses the assembly. He introduces the documentary hypothesis, a theory suggesting that the Pentateuch, including the stories about Abraham, derives from multiple sources, each with distinct characteristics. These sources, labeled as J, E, P, and D, are said to reflect different times and communities, perhaps explaining the inconsistencies and duplications in the narrative. The discussion becomes even more nuanced as they explore the broader ancient Near Eastern context. Some propose that the story of Abraham might be an amalgamation of various patriarchal legends common in the region. They draw parallels between Abraham and other ancient figures from Mesopotamian myths, suggesting that his story could have been influenced by or even borrowed from these traditions. And yet, the debate is not one-sided. Traditionalists in the room argue that such criticisms do not diminish the theological and moral truths conveyed through Abraham's story. They contend that whether or not every detail is historically accurate, the narrative serves a purpose that transcends literal history. It conveys profound truths about faith, covenant, and the relationship between God and humanity. As the discussion winds down, there is no clear resolution. The room is a microcosm of a larger, ongoing debate that spans generations and continents. What remains is a respect for the complexities and nuances of the biblical texts and an acknowledgement of the rich interplay between faith, history, and scholarship. In the end, dear reader, what do we make of these challenges? They invite us to look deeper, to question and explore, not to weaken our faith, but to strengthen it through understanding. For in the quest for truth, we may find that our faith, like Abraham's own, is tested and refined, leading us to a more profound appreciation of the mysteries of the divine narrative. Abraham, known as the Patriarch, holds a pivotal role in the histories and beliefs of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. His story is one that transcends religious boundaries, drawing from common threads while also weaving unique patterns specific to each faith tradition. In Judaism, Abraham is revered as Avraham Avinu, Abraham our father. He is the first of the three patriarchs and is seen as the founding father of the covenant, the special relationship between the Jewish people and God. The narrative of Abraham in the Torah begins with God's call to him to leave his homeland and journey to an unknown land that God would show him. This act of faith and obedience is foundational in Jewish thought. Genesis chapter 12 verses 2-3 encapsulates God's promise to make Abraham into a great nation, to bless him, and to make his name great so that he will be a blessing. Central to Judaism is the belief that Abraham established the idea of monotheism, expressing a singular devotion to one God, and his life is commemorated in Jewish practice through various rituals and annual readings. Christianity also holds Abraham in high esteem, often referring to him as a model of faith. The New Testament talks extensively about Abraham, particularly in the writings of Paul the Apostle. In the Christian tradition, Abraham's willingness to obey God's command to sacrifice his son Isaac, the Akedah, is seen as a prefiguration of God's sacrifice of his own son, Jesus Christ. This event underscores the themes of faith, obedience, and divine providence. Paul's epistles, especially in Romans chapter 4 verse 3, emphasize that Abraham's faith was credited to him as righteousness, making him a precursor to Christian beliefs about justification by faith. Christians view Abraham not only as a forefather but also as a spiritual ancestor whose covenant with God prefigures the new covenant established through Jesus. In Islam, Abraham is known as Ibrahim, and he is one of the prophets in the Islamic tradition. His story is found in the Quran, where Ibrahim is depicted as a pioneering monotheist who stands firmly against idolatry. A key difference in the Islamic narrative is the identity of the son whom Ibrahim is asked to sacrifice. Islamic tradition holds that it was Ishmael, not Isaac. This event, commemorated during the festival of Eid al-Adha, epitomizes submission to the will of Allah. Ibrahim's faith and actions are seen as exemplary, and he is considered a Hanif, someone who maintained pure monotheism. The Quran describes Ibrahim as a significant figure in the lineage of prophets that leads to Muhammad, and thus, he is deeply respected and honored in the Islamic faith. Despite the differences in details and emphases across these religions, the figure of Abraham serves as a unifying symbol of divine promise, faithfulness, and the quest for a relationship with the divine. Each tradition brings its own unique perspective to Abraham's narrative, reflecting broader theological and doctrinal differences while simultaneously highlighting the shared heritage of faith. In our exploration of the life and legacy of Abraham, we must not overlook the profound influence of archaeological discoveries on our understanding of his narrative. Picture, if you will, a vast expanse of desert sands in the ancient Near East, beneath which lie civilizations long forgotten. It is within this buried past that we uncover relics and records that cast new light on the storied figure of Abraham. Among these discoveries, the Ebla tablets stand out prominently. The tablets, unearthed from the ruins of the ancient city of Ebla in modern-day Syria, offer a fascinating glimpse into a world contemporary with Abraham's. Dating back to around 2300 BCE, these clay tablets are inscribed with cuneiform script and detail a myriad of administrative, economic, and cultural affairs of Eblaite society. But what is their significance to Abraham, you may wonder? The Ebla tablets are particularly intriguing because they mention names and places that resonate with the biblical narrative. Among these names are references that scholars interpret as being potentially linked to cities like Sodom and Gomorrah, which are pivotal in the story of Abraham. Imagine the excitement of those early archaeologists as they sifted through the layers of time, encountering mention of these ancient cities. The tablets do not confirm the biblical texts outright, but they provide a tantalizing connection that suggests a historical backdrop for the narratives we find in Genesis. Further adding to the mosaic of Abraham's world, other archaeological findings, such as the Nuzi tablets and discoveries in Mari, offer additional context. These records help to illuminate the customs, practices, and legal systems of societies akin to those that Abraham would have interacted with. For instance, the practice of covenant making and the significance of land and lineage are vividly portrayed in these ancient documents. Through these archaeological windows, we are invited to peer into the distant past and see a world where the historical Abraham might have walked. It provides a richer, fuller understanding of his environment, making the biblical accounts not just stories of faith, but narratives deeply rooted in space and time. Thus, the Ebla tablets and related discoveries serve not only as archaeological treasures but as bridges between our modern understanding and the ancient world of Abraham. They remind us that history and faith are not isolated realms but are intertwined, each enriching the other. In sum, these findings do not merely corroborate the biblical texts. They deepen our appreciation of the ancient world and the enduring story of Abraham, the man called the father of all nations. In the corridors of academia, where every whisper of the past is examined with meticulous care and intellectual rigor, the figure of Abraham stands as a point of vibrant debate. The archaeological spade digs into the sands of ancient lands, uncovering fragments of civilizations long gone, seeking clues that might corroborate, or challenge, the biblical narrative of this towering patriarch. Discussions. Asterisk. Let us embark on a journey through these scholarly discussions, crafted with the eloquence and clarity reminiscent of C.S. Lewis, making the complex accessible and enlightening. The discourse begins with the supportive evidence. Numerous scholars and archaeologists argue that findings such as the Ebla tablets, unearthed in the 1970s in modern-day Syria, provide indirect support for the historical existence of Abraham. These tablets, dating back to the 3rd millennium BCE, mention names and places that echo those in the biblical story, hinting at an ancient network of city-states that could have formed the backdrop to Abraham's life. The very mention of Sodom and Gomorrah on these tablets ignites the imagination, drawing lines from archaeology to scripture. Then there is the debate over the cultural practices and societal structures reflected in the Genesis accounts. The customs surrounding covenants, hospitality, and nomadic life described in Abraham's story are mirrored in what we know of ancient Near Eastern societies through archaeological findings. These elements, though indirect, lend a degree of credibility to the biblical narrative, suggesting that such a figure could indeed have existed within this historical framework. Yet, not all scholars stand in agreement. There are those who wield Occam's razor, arguing that the lack of direct, conclusive archaeological evidence for Abraham himself casts shadows over the traditional narrative. They posit that the stories of Abraham could be more myth than history, a way for early Israelites to root their identity in a shared patriarchal figure. Key academic voices in this debate include William G. Dever, a prominent figure in biblical archaeology, who stresses that while archaeological evidence can provide context, it rarely offers unequivocal confirmation of individual historical figures. In the case of Abraham, he suggests, we are likely dealing with a legendary figure who embodies the collective memory and identity of a people. Similarly, Israel Finkelstein of Tel Aviv University argues from a minimalist perspective, suggesting that the narratives surrounding Abraham were likely composed or significantly shaped during the 1st millennium BCE, reflecting the religious and socio-political needs of a later period rather than actual historical events from the 2nd millennium BCE. Conversely, scholars like Kenneth A. Kitchen advocate for a more maximalist approach, suggesting that a critical reading of both archaeology and the biblical text reveals a plausible historical core. Kitchen points to the congruence between patriarchal customs described in Genesis and those known from 2nd millennium BCE documents, arguing that such detailed sociological parallels are unlikely to be fabrications of a much later period. The debate, therefore, is far from settled. Each new find in the dust of ancient cities, each inscription unearthed, adds another piece to the puzzle, inviting scholars and laypeople alike to peer through the veils of time. The discussions around Abraham are emblematic of the broader dialogue between faith and reason, between belief and skepticism, that animates the study of ancient history. In the manner of C.S. Lewis, we might reflect on the nature of these debates not simply as an academic exercise, but as part of a larger quest for understanding. Whether Abraham's footprints are found etched in stone or within the hearts of believers, his story continues to inspire and challenge us. The search for truth, much like Abraham's own journey, is a path marked by faith, hope, and the earnest desire to bridge the human experience with the divine. Let us embark on a journey into the heart of the Old Testament, where we encounter the poignant and miraculous events that defined the life of Abraham, the man called the father of all nations. His story is not simply a series of historical vignettes but a tapestry woven with divine threads, each event carrying profound theological weight and spiritual significance. First, we come to the long-awaited birth of Isaac. Imagine a man and a woman, Abraham and Sarah, in the twilight of their years, past the age where bearing a child seems possible. Yet, it is amid this seeming impossibility that God makes a promise of a son. In Genesis chapter 17 verse 16, God declares to Abraham, "I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her." This was a promise that defied rationality and biology, a promise that demanded an extraordinary faith. At the appointed time, Sarah bore a son, and they named him Isaac, which means, "He laughs," for Sarah said, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." Genesis chapter 21 verse 6, Niv. The birth of Isaac is not merely the arrival of a long-desired child, it is a tangible manifestation of God's covenant with Abraham. It is as though God is reminding us through this miracle that he is not bound by the natural order, that his promises transcend our understanding and our limitations. Isaac's birth is a beacon of faith, an assurance that God's promises hold true, regardless of how improbable they may seem to human eyes. Now, let us journey to one of the most harrowing tests of faith recorded in Scripture: the sacrifice on Mount Moriah. In Genesis chapter 22, we read of a divine command that must have pierced Abraham's heart. "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Genesis chapter 22 verse 2, Niv. Here stands Abraham, the father who waited a century to hold his promised son, now asked to surrender him back to God. It is an agonizing request, one that seems to contradict the very covenant God made with Abraham. Yet, Abraham rises early the next morning, with unwavering obedience, and sets out with Isaac to the prescribed place. They arrive at Mount Moriah, and the scene is laden with tension and sorrow. Isaac, carrying the wood for the sacrifice, innocently asks, "The fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Genesis chapter 22 verse 7, Niv. Abraham's reply, "God himself will provide the lamb," encapsulates a profound faith and trust in God's provision. As Abraham raises the knife, the narrative reaches a crescendo, only to be halted by the angel of the Lord. "Do not lay a hand on the boy. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Genesis chapter 22 verse 12, Niv. God provides a ram caught in the thicket, and Abraham names the place, "The Lord will provide." This event is laden with theological significance. It is a profound foreshadowing of future sacrifices, particularly that of Jesus Christ, God's own Son, who would be the ultimate sacrificial lamb for humanity's sins. The sacrifice of Isaac on Mount Moriah is a narrative that speaks to the heart of obedience, trust, and the providence of God. It reveals the depth of Abraham's faith and presents a divine paradox: the call to surrender and the assurance of God's provision. In these miraculous events, the birth of Isaac and the near sacrifice on Mount Moriah, we see more than the actions and experiences of a single man. We witness the divine interplay between faith and promise, trust and provision. These stories remind us that the journey of faith is fraught with trials and miraculous interventions, each designed to draw us closer to the heart of God. Such is the legacy of Abraham, a legacy of profound faith and unwavering trust in the Almighty. Let us now turn our gaze to the enduring legacy of the man known as Abraham and how his faith and actions ripple through the sinews of contemporary religious practices and personal faith journeys. His story is the tale of unerring trust in the divine, a narrative that has crossed the thresholds of millennia and continues to invigorate the spiritual arteries of countless souls. Picture, if you will, a desert night, vast and infinite, where the sands shift ceaselessly under the celestial canopy. It was under such a sky that Abraham, then Abram, stood, listening to the whispers of the eternal. The promise of descendants as numerous as the stars was no idle poetic flourish but a divine decree that still echoes today in the hearts of the faithful. His unwavering belief in this promise despite the vicissitudes of life speaks volumes to believers who grapple daily with doubt and uncertainty. In the realms of contemporary Christianity, Abraham is often venerated as the paragon of faith. Churches worldwide invoke his name when speaking of faith that intersects with the impossible, a faith that remains steadfast when logical reasoning flounders. Every sermon that extols the virtue of trusting in God's timing nods, knowingly or unknowingly, to Abraham's fervent hope for a son promised, even into his old age. In moments of personal crisis, when faith wavers and the heart quivers, many find solace in Abraham's story, drawing strength from his exemplary trust. Judaism, too, finds in Abraham its first patriarch, not merely a historical figure but a symbol of the covenant between God and his chosen people. The ritual of circumcision, a physical sign of this covenant, still practiced diligently, harks back to that divine pact scripted in Genesis. The Jews remember Abraham's obedience and regard it as the gold standard of faithfulness. His life is annually recounted during the Torah readings, each retelling a meditative act of remembering the roots from which the Jewish identity springs. Moreover, in Islam, Abraham, or Ibrahim, is revered as a prophet and a model of submission to the will of Allah. The annual ritual of Hajj, especially the act of sacrificing an animal during Eid al-Adha, directly commemorates Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son in obedience to God's command. This act of faith, recorded in the Quran, serves as a compelling testament to what it means to submit wholly to the divine will. Muslims across the globe look to Ibrahim's narrative for guidance in surrendering their lives to God's will, trusting that his plans are always righteous. On a more personal level, Abraham presents a template for individuals navigating their spiritual journeys. His narrative is not one of unbroken triumph but one marked by trials and tribulations, doubts and resolutions. His journey is a mirror reflecting back our own spiritual peregrinations, fraught with obstinate uncertainties yet buoyed by hope. Believers today can glean from Abraham's willingness to step into the unknown, leaving the familiar, embracing the unseen, a metaphor for our own spiritual odysseys. In small church gatherings or large religious conferences, his name surfaces often. Testimonies of personal faith are laced with references to Abraham. When families face adversities, they remember how Abraham and Sarah awaited Isaac. When communities seek blessings, they recall the promise that through Abraham, all families would be blessed. Indeed, the very fabric of faith practice today, be it the act of prayer, the choice of hope over despair, or the commitment to steadfast obedience, finds threads interwoven with Abraham's story. Personal devotions and communal rituals alike, when examined closely, reveal echoes of Abraham's experiences. His life offers a profound reminder that faith is a journey, often meandering, occasionally stumbling, but always directed toward the divine. As we ponder Abraham's legacy, it behooves us to consider how his faith might inform our own. Are we willing to step out of our comfortable harems and embark on the journey to our promised land, trusting in God's promises even when the sands shift beneath our feet? Can we emulate his commitment in our highs and lows, in our laughter and our tears? Abraham's story is not just an ancient tale but a living testimony, a beacon lighting the path of faith and practice for generations yet to come. Dear listener, close your eyes for a moment and imagine the quintessential call of a man, echoed through millennia, depicted in the timeless strokes of artists, narrated in epic literature, and brought to life on the silver screen. Today, we delve into the cultural representations of Abraham, a man whose omnipresence extends far beyond the sacred texts and reaches into the heart of human creativity. Let us first wander through the hallowed halls of Renaissance art, where the sublime genius of Michelangelo takes form. Picture Michelangelo's creation of Abraham, a fresco that encapsulates the very essence of divine interaction with humanity. In a single snapshot, Michelangelo captures not just the moment of covenant but the entire spirit of Abraham's profound faith. The artistry conveys a narrative that transcends the boundaries of word, delivering the story through the silent eloquence of brushstrokes and pigments. Here, Abraham is both a historical figure and an icon of unwavering belief, his image a source of contemplation and reverence for generations. Transitioning from the canvas to the written word, Abraham's narrative threads its way through the quilt of global literature. Authors throughout history have found in Abraham's life a fertile ground for exploring themes of faith, sacrifice, and destiny. In John Milton's Paradise Lost, the character of Abraham is invoked as a paragon of obedient faith, a reflection that mirrors Milton's own wrestlings with divine providence. Similarly, in Herman Melville's Moby Dick, the biblical figure is alluded to as a symbol of resolute pursuit and existential questioning. Literature, then, becomes an echo chamber, amplifying Abraham's story and resonating with the spiritual inquiries of humankind. The silver screen, with its capacity to render stories in vivid motion, has not left Abraham's tale untold. Various cinematic adaptations have sought to breathe life into the ancient patriarch, presenting his journey with both reverence and modern sensibilities. Films like Abraham, 1994, offer a visual odyssey through his trials and triumphs, portraying scenes of his life with a balance of dramatized imagery and scriptural fidelity. In these representations, the audience is invited to witness not merely the historical Abraham, but a character whose dilemmas and decisions feel poignantly relevant. His faith challenges viewers to reflect deeply on their own spiritual convictions. Modern media, with its expansive reach and innovative narratives, continues to pay homage to Abraham's legacy. Television adaptations, documentaries, and even online platforms have become conduits for his story. Programs on networks like National Geographic and History Channel dissect his life, blending scholarly insights with accessible storytelling. Digital art and virtual reality projects also push the boundaries of how Abraham's journey can be experienced, offering immersive engagements that animate his ancient path for contemporary audiences. Each cultural depiction, from the grandeur of Renaissance art to the immersive reality of modern media, serves not just to retell Abraham's story but to recreate it in the viewer's soul. They ask us to see beyond the physical representations and to encounter the deeper truths of faith, sacrifice, and divine promise that Abraham's life embodies. Thus, Abraham remains not merely a figure of the past but a living testament to the enduring power of faith across eras and mediums. So, dear listener, wherever you encounter Abraham, be it in the quiet contemplation of art, the profound musings of literature, the dynamic portrayals in film, or the innovative realms of digital media, remember that these cultural representations offer more than just a story. They extend an invitation to reflect, to believe, and to partake in the timeless dance of faith. And so, dear friends, as we near the end of our journey through the life of Abraham, let us pause and reflect upon the remarkable tapestry of his story. Raised from the earth of Mesopotamia, murmuring in obedience to a divine call, Abraham embarked upon a pilgrimage that would forever alter the course of human history. Through deserts and mountains, amidst trials and promises, Abraham held fast to a covenant that was as radiant as the stars he once beheld. It was a covenant woven with threads of faith and obedience, each promise echoing the heartbeat of the divine. Imagine him, standing against the winds of time, his eyes lifted towards an unseen future, trusting in the whisper of a promise. A promise that his descendants would be as countless as the sands upon the shore. This covenant with God, sealed in the annals of Genesis, did not merely bind a man to his maker. It symbolized a profound theological principle, that faith is counted as righteousness. It is this faith, embodied in Abraham's willingness to leave behind all that he knew, even to the point of offering his beloved son, that stands as an everlasting testament to trust and devotion. What can we, modern believers navigating the complexities of our own lives, glean from this ancient patriarch? Abraham's steadfastness invites us to consider the depth of our own faith. Are we willing to step into the unknown, guided only by the assurance of God's promises? His journey calls us to examine the covenants we uphold in our hearts, urging us to embrace an unwavering commitment to divine guidance even when the path ahead appears shrouded in mystery. Let us be inspired by Abraham's fortitude, allowing his life to illuminate our own steps as we strive to walk in faith and obedience. As we conclude, I heartily encourage you, dear listeners, to delve deeper into the rich narrative of Abraham's life. Engage with this content, subscribe to our channel, like, and share your reflections in the comments. Your thoughts and insights are valuable, and they weave together a community of seekers, each one striving to understand and embody the lessons of faith exemplified by Abraham. Share your suggestions for future topics as we continue this journey of discovery together. Thank you for being a part of this exploration, and may Abraham's unwavering faith be a beacon of inspiration in all our lives. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the life and faith of Abraham, a true father of many nations. Just as you guided him, guide us to live lives of faith and obedience. Inspire us to trust in your promises amid uncertainties and challenges. We pray for understanding and wisdom as we study Abraham's example through the lens of your word. May his unwavering faith be a beacon to us in our spiritual journeys. Lord, help us apply these teachings to our lives, strengthening our trust in you. Amen.